Alright, hello, welcome to this next video. My voice is slightly hoarse because I was shouting too much at a concert, which is not recommended for vocal health, but I will survive. So, this video is dealing with perhaps a new concept called scale degrees. And scale degrees are a way of enumerating and then describing relationships between parts of a scale. So in these previous videos, we've been talking about basic scale construction. We've been talking about chords and relationships like that. Let's review just a couple things. When we're talking about a musical scale, I know that we were talking previously about how to find intervals and relationships between notes. So let's check this out first before we proceed. Let's talk about a C major scale. So here it is. I'll make it a little bigger for us. Here is a C major scale. Yep. And let's have a few more spaces in between these things. Okay. Now, that's our C major scale. Those are all the white keys on the keyboard. And we've talked about how certain note pairings have kind of an implicit half step between them. Those are E and F, B and C, which we're going to see in a second. But notice I don't have my sharps or flats in here because we're not dealing with a chromatic scale. We're just describing a major scale. But how would you know that this is a major scale? Just by looking at it, if you've never seen this before. How would you know that? Well, we would determine that there's a recurring pattern of whole steps and half steps. So if I make another text box here, I'm just going to write down what the whole steps and half steps are. So let's look at C to D. Thinking about the content of our last one of our last videos, C to D, is that a half step or a whole step? Well, you would say, oh, well, there's a C sharp / D flat between them. So C to C sharp would be the half step. C sharp to D would be another half step. That's a whole step. So I'm going to write this down like this. W for whole step. Okay, that's that first one. I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I think this will actually work out a little bit better. Where is my... Blast, I don't have it on here. No. No. Okay, forget it. I'm going to go back to the original idea. We're just going to do like this. Whole step. Boom. We'll do it like this. There's a whole step between these. Okay, there we go. It's decided. There's a whole step. Okay, what about D to E? Same thing applies. D to D sharp to E. It's two half steps. That equals a whole step. Okay, what did I say a second ago? E to F. That is a half step. So I'm going to put, actually no, not a whole step. I'm going to put a H for half step. Okay, F to G, kind of giving you a hint, right, by spacing the way I have. Whole step, I bet you're already thinking ahead. G to A, another whole step. Okay, A to B, another whole step. And lastly, B to C, it's our half step. If this is a little bit confusing, I recommend you go back and review the chromatic scale, and you'll see that between some of these there are sharps and flat notes. Those are, remember, enharmonically equivalent, so C sharp and D flat are the same note for all intended purposes in our system right now at this point. But between E and F and B and C, there is no intervening half step, so it just goes straight there with a half step. Okay, anyway, so our pattern is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That is the pattern for every major scale. Yes, every major. It doesn't matter what note you start on. As long as you have whole, half, whole, half, you will have a major scale. Let's prove it. Let's start on A. So, I'll make another one down here. Let's prove it. Okay, now, I'm going to talk about this in another video later, talk about the circle of fifths and things. For now, I want you to trust and believe me that this is an A major scale, and we'll prove it with the whole, half, whole, half, so we can kind of check my work, all right? A, B, C sharp, D, E. I'll get rid of that slash in a second. F sharp, G sharp, A. I'm sorry, it was on slash, it was a V. Okay, there it is. I got rid of it. Now, you know what? I'm not going to space it to give us any hints. Let's see if we can figure it out. So the question is, does this hold up? Okay, well, let's analyze it. A to B. We already did that. We already did A to B. We already know A to B. It wouldn't change. There's no reason for it to change down here. It's still a whole step. Now look here. B to C. B to C was a half step. But now we have C sharp. And C sharp has taken that and made it a larger distance. With a sharp by one half step, that's now two half steps. It's another whole step. I guess I could copy this one, huh? Yeah, okay. Now, when it did that, it scooted the C up to C sharp, but that made it closer to D. So we're not dealing with C to D, we're dealing with C sharp to D. That's our half step. Yep. Okay, D to E, we already did that. It's still true. There's no flats or sharps involved here. It's still the same thing. E to F sharp. This is the same thing that occurred between B and C. Now E and F sharp. F, which was this close to E, has been bumped up. It's been scooted up. So it's another half step. I'm sorry, whole step, I meant to say. Another whole step. Another whole step. Okay, and then F sharp, G sharp. You see where I'm going here? If F to G was a whole step, and then you sharp both of them, that's another whole step. Okay, and then G sharp to A. G to A was a whole step. G sharp is G moved up, made it that space a little smaller. It's now a half step there. So it's not as neat as this one was up here. I spaced this one a little differently, but it's still whole, half, whole, half. I encourage you to try it out for yourself. We did this way, just checking one. To make sure we're feeling good about this, I'm going to do one more, but I'm going to start it differently. What if I start an F? Make it bigger. Start an F. Okay? Now, what's our pattern? Whole step above F is a G. To make this longer this way. Good. Okay. That was one whole step. Now we need another one. Whole step above G. We already did this. It's an A. Excuse me. Now the critical moment. We have two whole steps. Now we need a half step. So here's the question. Would you say A sharp or B flat? Well, notice how in each one of these, both of these, I mean to say, we didn't use D flat here, and we didn't use A flat here. We're still working to represent each letter. So I want you to think about it that way, that we need to represent the next letter in the sequence. But an accidental added to it is going to help us maintain the whole half, whole half. maybe you recall in the confusing situation where I said, um, like if we had, the answer is B flat, but what if someone wrote A sharp? Would you accept that answer? I wouldn't. No. Why not? If you recall in our other videos, what I was saying a second ago was that this is actually an augmented third, the A sharp is. Because A is the third above F. More on that in this video later in a second. But that wouldn't be the fourth. That's an augmented third. For it to be the fourth, it has to be this half step above the third to be the perfect fourth. So, and by perfect fourth, I don't mean some kind of like Hallmark movie. I mean like it's the interval of a perfect fourth. So, okay. Whole step from B flat up. Well, B to C with a half step. Now, this is the other situation where B got lowered by being flatted. It extended that. So it's a C. When we're doing these major scales and some minor scales, we will not be mixing any flats or sharps. There are some exceptions. There are some unusual exceptions here and there, but amongst other scales. With major scales, we will not be mixing flats or sharps. It'll either be with sharps or with flats, or with none at all in the case of C major. Okay, anyway, I'll keep going. Whole step. D. Whole step. E. Now a half step. If you're brand new at this, and it seems like I'm going a little quick, it's because I've memorized these quite thoroughly after doing this for a long time. So, we used our whole, whole, half to help us construct this scale. I am telling you that that is F major. That's F major right there with one flat. Why does it only have one flat? Well, it's because we started on F and we had to maintain the whole half. Just to say, because it says so in the circle of fifths, is not an adequate answer. In my book, circle of fifths is a pedagogical tool to help with teaching and learning. It is not the rule setter itself. If something is setting our rules in terms of when do we use sharps or flats, it's this idea that our major scale is constructed of a recurring pattern of whole, half, whole, half. Okay, more on that later. Anyway, let's get to the next part of this, which is the name of this video, which is about scale degrees. So I'm going to just scroll back up here to my handy dandy C major, and I'm going to put an extra piece of information. I want to put, do I have the ability to do that in this? Well, I'm gonna do my best. Okay, yeah, it'll be fine. We're winging it. Not really. I mean, I know what I'm gonna talk about. Okay, so, now I'm gonna use an Arabic numeral to represent this, and I'm gonna draw a little picture on top. I should have used my iPad for this part, but it's very early in the morning, and I don't know, it just didn't occur to me right off the bat. So we can deal with my little drawings, my little mouse drawings. Now, this is not some kind of accent. I'm trying to make it a little hat. I'm trying to make a little hat for it, but it's not giving me a ton of axes of control here, is it? If you're taking me seriously right now, I thank you very much. It's always some antics with Dr. Welty. You know what? We're gonna live with that. So it gets a little hat. And the little hat is telling us in music theory land that we're describing something that is a scale degree. Now, if I keep this going, this would not be 1, it would be 2. And then, nice, excellent. If I do this again, I'm going to give 2 a little hat. Hooray! And then if I do this again, put over here, I'll give a little hat again. Hooray! You see where I'm going with this, right? With this absurd clicking and pointing and hooray. They all get little hats. You get a hat, and you get a hat. They all get hats. Okay. Hat is not a technical term. It's just what I say actually. And I'm just keeping going to be thorough. I think I can talk and do this. So, this is similar to our idea of intervals. I'm sure you've noticed that the quantity matches, right? Now, remember that when we're describing intervals, right? I'm not going to put 8 there. When we're describing intervals, we're describing the distance between 2 notes. We can also break down intervallic relationships in a triad amongst other notes, but we're really measuring point A to point B. And so from wherever you're measuring, that thing is essentially 1 because you're measuring the distance, right? It's like you imagine like how many numbers did it traverse from where I started counting? In the case of scale degrees though, while they do resemble our relationships intervallically from C, they're not referred to that way. Imagine, if you will, that we were just in the key of C and we're like, okay, we're in the key of C. We would say any occurrence of F is scale degree 4. That F is scale degree 4. Okay. You could imagine that this is suggesting a type of function, sorta, within the environment that it's the environment of the piece that it is working. Each one of these numbers. So again, these are a little more fixed rather than the intervals, where we're always counting from 1 wherever we start counting, like D to A would be a 5th, but if we were counting B to E, that would be a 4th because we're counting from B, okay? But if I'm in the key of C and I'm talking about the scale degrees, D to F will always be scale degree 2 to scale degree 4 in that context. Okay? So again, it can be true that F to A is a major third. That's true. In the context of the key of C major, that is scale degree 4 to scale degree 6. And it's also a major third. But we wouldn't change the numbers in relation to C major. Okay? We're going to keep going with this idea, so I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, you can review. You can also probably keep watching because I think things will also start to settle in a little more too. So, these scale degrees apply to any key. This might look a little unruly, but I could literally just drag these down. Wow, they almost align. It's almost perfect. Now look at that. That's still true because it's based on what our tonic is, and our tonic is 1. Now, these all have names. 1 is tonic, 2 is supertonic, 3 is mediant, 4 is subdominant, 5 is dominant, 6 is the submediant, 7 is the leading tone, then we're back at 1, which is the tonic. If you're in my course and you're watching this, you don't have to memorize that right now. That's more for music fundamentals and music theory. But they do have names. But here's my point. The scale degrees are always going to be this collection of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in any major key. That's pretty useful, right? Because then you can describe stacks of notes, melodic gestures. You can describe those things, dare I say, universally within our system without having to rely on the nuances of a particular key. It also means that in our system, these scales basically function a similar way. That you could transpose a piece of music from one key to another, and while it might sound higher or lower, the hierarchy of relationships that make the piece or the song sound the way it does are still maintained. There's some nuance to that historically, if you go way back, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Just be aware that what I'm talking about is existing in our modern era. Okay, anyway, yada yada yada. Let's keep going. So, okay, we got scale degrees. So what? How does this relate to triads and things that we were talking about? Well, remember how I said about triads that they're based on tertian harmony? The idea of stacking things in thirds? Well, this is another way to help us visualize and conceptualize what these stackings look like. So, let's consider a C major chord. It's pretty easy. Oops, I didn't want text. It's pretty easy. What I've done here is I've connected C, E, and G. Those are in thirds. That's our C major chord. It's just represented a little differently along this line of notes and scale degrees. So it is a true statement in the key of C, where C is 1, that a C major chord consists of 1, 3, 5. You could say, in the key of C, therefore, right? If I bring both of these with me, we could shift this over and say that a chord built on D consists of DFA. If you were to analyze the relationships between 2, 4, and 6, you would discover this is a minor triad. I don't want to go crazy too too early with that. So why that is, we'll talk about later in this video. We're almost there. I don't want to get off on a tangent here. So if I keep shifting it over, I get chords in thirds. Right? It's still true. That would be true down in A major and F major as well. So wait a minute. So when we're thinking about scales and scale degrees, it's essentially the idea with building chords that we're building a stack of thirds from each scale degree. I'm going to say that again. When we're thinking about chords in a key, it's like we're building a stack of thirds off of each scale degree in the key. And so, this is where we get this next little system of describing things. Where I have Roman numerals. Now I'm going to move all of you down here because I don't want it to get confusing. So, I wish I had the beams, but I'm using the wrong font. Let me see if I can easily change the font. Yeah, let it ride. Okay. Well, we have a Roman numeral for a 1. That's pretty dramatic. Okay, we'll do that one. Not as dramatic. Okay, so that's a 1. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, this is Roman numeral analysis. And a complete, very thorough um, explanation and explication on Roman numeral analysis is too long and too complex and too heavy for this little video series. But just know that when people say the 1 chord, they mean the chord that is the home key, the center of gravity, the one that makes it feel like everything got resolved. More on that later. There's a pattern here too, just like with whole, half, whole, half. Now remember, just to back up, scale degrees are talking about just individual notes. Whole, half, these things are representing the spaces between these single pitches. But these guys, the Roman numerals, are describing triads. So this is describing, like when I have the W's, this is describing C, E, G. In fact, I'll help us out and put C, E, G. And it's small, just below it. Nice. Okay. Now, what about D? Remember when I said that we built a chord on D? We call that the 2 chord because it's built on 2. It's built on 2. And it's lowercase because it's minor. Because when I look at, not CEG, but in thirds, D, F, A, that is a minor triad. I'm going to keep going with the same idea. Now, under E, can you guess what it is? 3, can you guess the quality? E, G, B. It's minor. Try best to align these. Now, I think we have the idea. I'm going to go just a little quicker so this is all filled out, just so we have an idea of it. Need to make this one a little smaller, just so things can fit. There we go. That's a little happier. This is for the F. G, B, D. I'm suddenly forgetting the hotkey to make a superscript, like a degree sign. I'm just gonna put blast. I'm forgetting how to. Well, without going on a wild goose chase, I know what I'll do. I'm overthinking it again. I know there's a way for me to do that in like as a superscript, but it slipped my mind just now how exactly to do that. There's a little circle there, and then lastly we are back with 1. Now, then we're back with 1, which is the same as C and G. So that little circle represents a diminished triad because the triad. Oh, I remember 8, guys. I'm sorry. Bah. I'm just looking. Bah. It auto-corrected for me. Aha. Now it's right. So, that circle that I added there represents diminished triad. What does that mean? Well, remember from our last video, we did talk about this. I remember. We did talk about this. Diminished triad is when you stack 2 minor thirds. Prove it. Well, if you have B to D, that's a minor third. That's a whole step and a half step. And then D to F is also a whole step to a half step, right? Whole step and a half step together, D to F. So that's a diminished triad. Try playing it on the keyboard and notice how it doesn't sound like the other triads. Okay, now, this pattern is absolutely worth memorizing as well, because this is a recurring pattern. This is major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Say it with me. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Memorizing this will serve you very well, because this is true in every key. Say it again. This is true in every key. It's true in every key. If you did the same process down here, going in thirds each time, you would have the same pattern of major and minor chords. Now there's just little asterisks and caveats if you were to do this in a minor key, which we haven't done in these little mini lessons. So I'm going to save that for another time. But this is a way of describing scale degrees, letter names, distances, and then chord qualities and numbers. This is also sort of the basis for something like the Nashville number system, if you've heard of that. If you haven't, don't worry about it. But this is a way that musicians like myself pick up songs very quickly if I'm playing in a cover band or if I'm playing in certain jazz contexts or things like that. Pick up songs real fast because I'm thinking about relationships, chord relationships according to numbers. Now sometimes certain chord progressions kind of bend the rules, or there's like a little key change or a modulation or something, and that's okay too. But this is diatonic within a major scale. By diatonic, I mean all part of that scale. If we were to alter something with a flat or sharp, we would be entering the realm of more chromatic types of harmonies. Okay, so that's all for this video. Stick around for the next one, which I'm going to record right now, because we're going to be talking about a different type of chord notation that you're more likely to see, because this one is describing quality and function. For analysis. Okay. That's all I have for this video. Check out the next one. Okay. See you later.